Ons genootschap vergt een bepaalde mate van zelfopoffering.
In true initiation, they sacrifice the lower self for the higher self. But what shadow alchemy, anti-alchemy, secret societies, and traditions like Ares, which is based on real societies, what they do is that they sacrifice the higher for the lower.
En het vermogen tot zelfopoffering maakt het verschil tussen leiders en volgers. En dit genootschap leiden vraagt absoluut alles.
So that's why we see them during the inauguration ceremonies sacrificing their soul to Beal in the form of an egg, right? So the egg is the container, if you will, of the soul, right? It's the thing that can become anything. And so it's like the acorn, right, within us that has the capacity to grow into the full tree of life, right? Thus returning from the height from whence it fell. Of course, you can't sacrifice your soul. Your soul is the immortal aspect of you, but you can sacrifice your connection to your soul.
Ik voel mezelf niet meer.
And that's on purpose. The whole idea, again, like true initiation is about attaining your true self, your higher self. Shadow anti-alchemy initiation is about losing your true self, so that you live purely in the ego, purely in the sitrakra, right? So that you become a parasitic human being who seeks to get more, right? A hungry ghost that can't get enough, more money, more power, more wealth, more status, etc., etc., etc. So that's what they want to turn these people into. They want to turn them into demonic forces, parasitic forces that wants to get more to the detriment of everyone else.
Jij moet Beal bevrijden.
Op Ares!
So now she's going to sacrifice her soul in the form of the egg. Yeah, the thing that can become anything. So what they are doing here is that they are not devoted to the Opus Magnum, the great work of unification, of descending into the darkness to lift up fallen spirit, right? To dig out the borrowed gold, to use alchemical language. What they do is the exact opposite. They take the gold and they deliberately offer it up to the darkness, to the chaos, to the disorganized nether realm of the Sitrakra. So this is what makes them anti-alchemists, because the alchemist goes into the raw prima materia, right, what they call our chaos, and they find the gold and they return it from whence it fell. What they do is that they take the soul and they offer it up to the darkness, to the chaos, to the Sitra Akra. Alright guys, final episode of Ares. You guys ready? Let's go. So we have Carmen, right? And I like the symbol here with the triangle pointing downwards towards the shadow. Now she knows, what Ares is about. And they got Jacob here in the president's office.
Kan je ons even alleen laten?
Carmen, zeg Rosa dat ik haar vertrouw.
Carmen,
Ze moet dit vrijlaten.
weg nu.
Ze moet het goede doen.
Kom maar.
Alright. We actually go into this exact place that we see in the intro of every episode. And here we have all the topmost members, all the senior members of Ares, arriving to the Lodge House for the inauguration of the new president. Such a banger.
Roderick, waar is Rosa?
Dit was ook haar kamer. In haar hoogtijdagen was jouw moeder een fenomenale vrouw. Kom, sta eens op. God, wat lijk je toch op haar. Dezelfde strijdlust. Dezelfde ogen.
Ik heb de ogen van mijn vader.
Je vader. Waarom ze toen voor hem koos, daar hebben we toen allemaal niks van begrepen.
I'm pretty sure that she left Maurits after he killed someone to become president, right? I mean, severing his connection to his heart and soul probably was a contributing factor, I would imagine, why she was like, you know what, I don't want to be with this guy. I mean, I think she even knows that he killed someone because he had blood on his cheek, you know, during the inauguration ceremony. So that's probably why she doesn't want to be with you, Maurits, left you.
Hij is er niet voor je. Nooit geweest ook. Je maakt één zelfstandige keuze. Je kiest voor jezelf, voor je ontwikkeling. Ons genootschap vergt een bepaalde mate van zelfopoffering.
In initiation science, it's said that you need to sacrifice to attain a high level of consciousness. Sacrifice here means a redistribution of focus and energy, right? So the moment you move your focus from here to there, you're sacrificing this for this. What you sacrifice is the lower for the higher, what they call the lower human personality in occult philosophy. Looking at this Kabbalistically, the human personality is constituted by the 4 lower spheres upon the tree of life. So Netzach, the heart and emotions, Hod, the intellect, thought, logic, Yesod, the subconscious and instincts and the imagination as well, and then Malkut, our brain consciousness and nervous system and our experience of physical reality. To sacrifice your lower human personality, that means you stop identifying with your body, with your instincts, with your thoughts, and with your emotions. And you realize that you're not your body, you're not your instincts, you're not your thoughts, and you're not your emotions. You have these things. What has these things? Your soul and higher self, Tiferet, as it's called in Kabbalah, which is our point of contact with the higher self. So that's what they do in true initiation. They sacrifice the lower self for the higher self. But what shadow alchemy, anti-alchemy, secret societies, and traditions like Aries, which is based on real societies, what they do is that they sacrifice the higher for the lower.
En het vermogen tot zelfopoffering maakt het verschil tussen leiders en volgers. En dit genootschap leiden vraagt absoluut alles.
So that's why we see them during the inauguration ceremonies sacrificing their soul to Beal in the form of an egg, right? So the egg is the container, if you will, of the soul, right? It's the thing that can become anything. And so it's like the acorn, right, within us that has the capacity to grow into the full tree of life, right? Thus returning from the height from whence it fell, yeah? Of course, you can't sacrifice your soul. Your soul is the immortal aspect of you, but you can sacrifice your connection to your soul. And you connect to your soul through your heart, right? This is something that we all know intuitively. That's why we call it our heart and soul. It's not because our heart is our soul, but it's sort of like the phone booth to the divine, you know? So we feel into our heart, and that way we connect to a higher reality. In Hindu Tantra, or in certain traditions at least, they say that Shiva, while operating from the crown chakra, also has a presence in the heart chakra as well. So why do they want to do this? Well, because they want to dominate and rule this world down here, right? But the thing is that if you're an initiate, you realize that what is truly running the show is the divine. And the best you can be is a co-creator with the divine, a channel of the divine, yeah? But the human ego is afraid of this. The human ego, the low human personality, is afraid of realizing the grand scope of things, that it's actually very, very small and very constricted. It doesn't want to be humbled. It wants to be God, basically, right? But it cannot be God. It cannot be God in a divine sense, but it can exert quite a bit of influence in the lower physical realm. So that's why they want to disconnect from that higher wisdom, from the higher self. It's so that, on one hand, it's not held back from doing nefarious things that can further its agenda and ambitions, but it's also to feel more powerful. Because if you can't hear this higher wisdom, and if you're not connected to it, then you feel bigger, you know? Because if you've had like some divine experiences in your life and have come face to face, if you will, mind to mind, if you will, with a greater, much, infinitely greater, in fact, consciousness than yours, it's humbling. It's a beautiful thing. It's humbling. But people like this don't want to feel humble. They don't want to feel small, if you will. They want to feel greater. But in seeking to feel greater through the ego, they become smaller. But anyway, so that's what they do, right? They sacrifice the higher for the lower instead of sacrificing the lower for the higher. And in that way they become very, very small individuals indeed.
Jij hebt het in je, Rosa. Jij hebt het in je om een nieuw soort leider te worden.
I mean, he's right about that, you know? He's absolutely correct that she will become a new kind of leader. But he doesn't know what kind of leader. Maurits, Ares, they're not interested in having a truly empowered and embodied woman as a leader, right? A true high priestess who personifies the great goddess. They want these women to be like them. So that's why Maurits wanted his own daughter to sacrifice a baby, because that's about the least maternal thing you can possibly do. Because a female leader is like a mother. The goddess is the great mother, and the high priestess, personifying the goddess, is also adopting the mother archetype. For them, their tribe, their society, their people is in a way their children. You know, that's their family. That's the ones that they are here to caretake. And that's actually what we need in the world. We need more mother wisdom in the world and in places of leadership. They don't want that, obviously. They want these women to be Athenas, if you will, or like post subsumation into the sky god religion Athena. So that's why Maurits wanted his daughter to sacrifice a baby, to make sure that she would not be a woman in her divine feminine. And we'll see what Rosa will have to do to become president in a short while. Brace yourselves.
Waarom vertel je er niet gewoon wat je met haar van plan bent? Wat houden jullie gevangen onder dit gebouw?
Die informatie kan alleen gedeeld worden met de oud-presidenten en de huidige leider.
Je weet niet wat hij van je vraagt. Jacob wilde dat ik iets doorgeef aan je, om het goede te doen.
Carmen laat haar.
The swirl. Remember this image. And I've pointed to Henry Swanenberg before, who we have sitting here on the right, the oldest son of Maurits. I said in the other video that we won't see him talking anymore. We will kind of just see him in the background, sitting or standing around, looking very gloomy, looking very depressed. And his presence in the show, while quiet, while in the background, it speaks volumes, and it takes up a lot of thematic size and weight in the show, because he's a former president, so he also killed someone close to him, and we see him in the beginning being very sort of debonair and nonchalant and very much carrying himself like the prince of the Dutch underworld that he is, right? Because Ares is a society within a society. It is essentially an aristocracy, a shadow aristocracy that is operating behind the scenes, right? But what we're seeing here is that he is not carrying himself like an Arnold Worms, like a Joost, and like these inner court members, some of whom we have sitting around here. He seems way down. And I think that is because he's actually in contact with Beal. He's in contact with his own shadow, with his shame, with his guilt, with all of this that he has been taught to suppress. So he's in contact with that. He's struggling with that. So just remember that, because when we see him towards the end of the show, I think many people probably don't notice him, but I'll point it out, but just again keep an eye out on this character, because I think he's one of the key pieces of the show. So now we're gonna see the inner court members here.
Welkom. Mag ik eerst de kring vragen te gaan staan?
By the circle. This is the secret society within the secret society, and of course it's only men, right?
Waarde leden, al enige tijd ben ik verantwoordelijk voor de doorstroom binnen onze aardes. Verantwoordelijk voor puurheid, voor zuiverheid en een consistentie daarin.
And the consistency, that's an interesting word for it. Notice here that we have a cross, the visual of a cross on Jacob's right. That is going to be relevant in just a moment, if in fact it's deliberate, which I think it might be.
Oké, draai om. Dan maak ik je los.
Nee.
Jacob, dit is geen test. Dit is echt.
But we have Carmen here, you know. Carmen has been I mean, of course, is very entrenched in the esoteric elitism of the Netherlands, but she didn't know how bad it really was. I mean, she has been quite a interstice character for me, kind of one foot in, one foot out. She has qualities that I find not very good, and she has qualities that I find quite decent, but she's really stepping up now after she's found out how nefarious this order really is, what it requires its inner court members to do. And so she's actually rebelling now. And recall that in the beginning of the show, we see her wearing orange, the color of William of Orange, the leader of the Dutch revolt against Habsburg Spain. Orange is actually the national color of the Netherlands, despite not being on the flag. But once upon a time, during the Dutch revolt against Spain, and also years after, it was the third color alongside blue and white. So it was the color of William of Orange, it was the color of rebellion. So what we see now is her living up to that initial outfit that we saw her in, because now she's rebelling. She's going against her dad, she's going against Ares, and she is trying to get Jacob the hell out of there.
Je loopt zo achter mij aan. Rechtstreeks naar buiten. Geen vragen.
Nee.
But Jacob, his mind is set. You know, Jacob has been aligned for a very, very long time in the show. He is a character. I love these types of characters. I love these everyday characters who don't have more resources than others, and they're not built like Captain America and can punch their way through every problem. They're an everyman character, but they have this what to call it, this quality, this virtue that George Orwell had. George Orwell, he said, I'm not better than anybody else, I'm not smarter than anybody else, but what I can do is I can stare an ugly truth in the face and not look away. And that is a real virtue, and I think it's a virtue that is lacking in society. The ability to look at something that is going on in the world, that is going on in society, and not looking away. He's a character who can do that. He feels, because we all feel it, right? We all feel when something is off. But what separates the courageous people from the not so courageous people is when you feel that and you dare to feel it, and you find out what it is. And you find out, okay, something is off here. What is off here? Why is it off? What can I do about it? And that's what Jacob did. He began the show as an anxious mess, you know, and from the outside perspective, when you compare him to like an Orwell Borms or an Joost, then people would be like, oh, this guy has an issue. This guy has mental issues. You know, he needs therapy. And I'm sure people said something similar when it came to the concentration camp guard, who was an absolute mess because he was part of a monstrous system. But how many said that about the concentration camp guard who returned to his family, smiling, kissing his wife on the cheek, and, you know, taking up his son or daughter and just eating his dinner with a big smile on his face, right? Who is the person who has mental issues here? Is it the person who's an anxious mess, who's depressed, who's sad as hell because of the monstrous situation that they're aware of? Or is the person who is just nice and accommodated to the situation? It's obviously the latter, right? But Jacob, he's a character who feels that something is wrong and he dares confront that. And what we see is that he has become the strongest character in the show. He is aligned, but he is grounded. He knows what he has to do, and he's willing to sacrifice the lower for the higher, as we shall see very soon.
Al jaren, zoals u alle weet, is Ares uit balans. En zelfs de jonge onschuld slaagt er niet in het evenwicht te herstellen.
He's absolutely correct. Ares needs to attain greater balance, just as the rest of society needs to attain greater balance. He looks at it horizontally, gender-wise, right? For hundreds of years, Ares, the Dutch elite, has been male-dominated. We need more women, right? So he looks at it horizontally. He's right to look at it that way as well, but obviously he wanted women to turn into men, basically, or sort of just operate from the same type of cognition as men do. But the real imbalance that we are dealing with is a vertical imbalance. It's an imbalance between spirit and fallen spirit. The Kabbalist mystic Isaac Luria said that essentially the world was created in a way by mistake. There was a shattering event once upon a time a violent shattering event, but he's basically describing the Big Bang of sorts. And when the shattering event happened, particles of spirit descended and became trapped in what is known as the Sitra Akra, the other side, the lower world, the underworld, what is being illustrated in Aries in the form of Beal, as we will see towards the end of the episode here. And the purpose of life, essentially, according to Isaac Luria and according to the alchemists, that is to lift up the fallen spirit. It is to find the borrowed gold. It is to return that which was fallen to the state from whence it fell, right? So that is unification, that is balance. So we absolutely need horizontal unity between men and women, the masculine and the feminine. We also need it between fallen spirit and the state from whence it fell, and that is from the state of awareness, from pure awareness. But yeah, we'll get into that later.
Het is tijd voor een omslag. Het is tijd voor een radicale verandering. Mag ik u voorstellen aan de nieuwe kandidaat? Rosa Steenwijk.
Who do you think she has to sacrifice?
Rosa, doe het niet. Rosa.
Maak je keuze, Rosa.
Ik zei toch dat zo'n studentenvereniging niks voor jou is?
Yeah, I think this is like the second time we see him smiling in the show. The first time is at the restaurant where they're having, just hanging out. And that's right before Carmen, Roderick, and Marai, they arrive. And now he's smiling here towards the end, towards his end. We have her standing between two pillars. We can look at that as evoking the High Priestess, right? Because they do use very secular language, but when you are president, you are a priest. You are an intermediary between not the mundane and the divine, humans and gods, but between the student members of Aries and then the higher level members of Aries. But Rosa is not here to become a secular priestess within a patriarchal society. She's here to truly, I believe, bring back the goddess religion that was suppressed and subsumed into the sky god religion that fashioned the patriarchal world we live in today, and that is, as Maurits recognizes, out of balance. What we see here is a carpet with the logo of Aries and the true color of Aries, red. Outwardly, Aries presents itself in the color blue, which is a color that evokes trust, but its true color is red. And that's the same case with the student organization LSV Minerva. It also presents itself with the color blue, but if you go into their website and you press on their society page, it's scarlet red. So we have the carpet here in the ritual chamber of Aries, where the aspirants become members and where the aspiring presidents become presidents. And the color is red. And we see these waves that I think evokes the ocean. Of course, the ocean is blue because it reflects the blue of the sky, but when we consider the fact that Aries, which is based on these student societies that descend from the members and families of the VOC, the Dutch East India Company, then it makes sense why these waves would be red. And that is because the VOC, the Dutch East India Company, and the West East India Company, these first mega corporations that were run by the regent families that the Swanenburgs represent, they were a highly violent sort and had hundreds of thousands of slaves. They committed genocide. They forced local populations to go along with their dictates. They were a force of terror for hundreds of years. They were a mega corporation, yes, but they were also a country within a country that had their own armies so that they could go out there and conquer. And that brought a lot of suffering to a lot of people, to Africans, to Asians, and that is the foundation of Aries, of these societies that form the elite underbelly of the Netherlands. And that foundation is the oceans that they used to dominate, all the blood that they sacrificed in order to attain matched wealth. Because the VOC was not just the first international mega corporation in the world, it was the most profitable ever. How was it the most profitable ever? Well, you can probably guess why. Because they were willing to do anything to intimidate, to murder, and to enslave.
Ik voel mezelf niet meer.
And that's on purpose. The whole idea again, like true initiation is about attaining your true self, your higher self. Shadow anti-alchemy initiation is about losing your true self so that you live purely in the ego, purely in the sitrakra, right? So that you become a parasitic human being who seeks to get more, right? A hungry ghost that can't get enough, more money, more power, more wealth, more status, etc., etc., etc. So that's what they want to turn these people into. They want to turn them into demonic forces, parasitic forces that wants to get more to the detriment of everyone else.
Ik dacht dat ik degene was die het af moet maken, maar ik ben onderdeel van het probleem. Ik, mijn familie. Jij moet Beal bevrijden.
So Jacob sacrificed himself, which is the exact opposite of what the presidents do, right? They sacrifice someone else to attain power. They sacrifice a soul to attain power. And Jacob does the opposite. He realizes that there are worse things than death, right? And that is to lose who you really are. So they do this to trigger so much sadness, so much guilt, that they can't live with it, so that they let go of it. You know, and by doing that, they throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to say, so that they become capable of doing anything without feeling bad about it. And whenever they feel bad about it, they sacrifice it to Beal. So now she's going to sacrifice her soul in the form of the egg. Yeah, the thing that can become anything. In Lurianic Kabbalah, they say that there was a shattering event once that actually created the universe. The universe was created through an accident, or that there was an accident at the origin of the universe that caused spiritual particles, souls if you will, to descend into the darkness of the Sitra Akra. And the goal of being a human being is what he calls Tikkun Olam, which is the reparation of the world. What the alchemists call the great work, right? Which is the unification of the fallen with the higher. So what they are doing here is that they are not doing Tikkun Olam. They are not devoted to the Opus Magnum, the great work of unification, of descending into the darkness to lift up fallen spirit, right? To dig out the borrowed gold, to use alchemical language. What they do is the exact opposite. They take the gold and they deliberately offer it up to the darkness, to the chaos, to the disorganized nether realm of the Sitra Akra. So this is what makes them anti-alchemists, because the alchemist goes into the raw prima materia, right, what they call our chaos, and they find the gold and they return it from whence it fell. What they do is that they take the soul and they offer it up to the darkness, to the chaos, to the Sitra Akra.
Ik wil het zien.
Uh-oh.
Ik wil Beal zien.
Do you guys want to see Beal as well? What do you think it looks like? What do you think it is? Well, you won't have to guess for long, because we're going to find out. I've said what I've said. I've said my piece. I see it as the Sitra Akra, a localized Sitra Akra. I see it as an Egregore, right? A parasitic thought form that feeds off the mental energy of a group, in this case, Aries. Remember what I've talked about before in this series about Venus, and how Venus is a very volatile planet that can go from being very highly elevated to descending down beneath the horizon? Well, Rosa very much represents Venus in this show. Right, we see her Rubenesque figure outlined against the sun. She has a scalloped pillow next to her, as one of you pointed out. And upon that pillow lies an egg and the invitation to join Aries. The egg representing the soul, but it's also a fertility symbol. It's a symbol of Venus. Her name Rosa also evokes Venus, the rose being the flower of Venus. And the OG Venusian goddess Ishtar that Aphrodite is derived from, she ruled the planet Venus. And there is a very powerful myth that I think is very, very appropriate to mention here, and that is the descent of Inanna into the underworld. In the story, Inanna, aka Ishtar, moves through 7 gates to meet her sister Egregore, the queen of the underworld. Depth psychologists understand Egregore to be Ishtar's dark half. And what we see now is Rosa, the Venusian main character of the show, descending into the basement of Aries to see Beal.
Waar is Beal?
So we see here that Beal is a vortex.
Beal. Een verhaal dat we de rest van de leden vertellen. Ik ben Beal. Jij bent Beal. Wij zijn Beal. Prachtige. Ouder dan Amsterdam. Niemand weet hoe oud precies. Maar wij zijn de eerste die dit ten volle benutten.
Er is geen monster.
Nee. Dit is alles wat wij afstoten. Waar we over zwijgen. De doofpot.
And that is exactly how an Egregore functions, right? An Egregore has no life of its own. It's a metaphysical organism that is made up of the mental cells of the people that are hijacked into it, and that it feeds off. So indeed, Beal is made up of all the members, of all the shame and sadness and guilt, all the stuff that the members for decades and centuries have sacrificed to it in order to go out there like highly functioning sociopaths that are willing to do anything, right, with no moral gripes, with no conscience. Or this feeling of I did something wrong, I did something bad, I don't want to deal with this, and so they just let go of it. So this makes Beal a Citra Acra-esque Egregore. I mean, if you look at it from a metaphysical point of view, then Beal would be older than, I mean, as old as humanity, I would say, or perhaps even older. I mean, the Citra Acra is as old as the universe itself. Now, I do think that Beal is an Egregore. So, in that sense, it would be as old as the humans that first fed it. And the question is, who would they be? Dark magicians, anti-alchemists, if you will? It's interesting to ponder. But this is what dark magicians work with. What Dine Fortune calls the sewage system of the universe.
We gebruiken dit zodat wij de beslissingen kunnen nemen waartoe anderen niet in staat zijn. Zodat wij de leiders kunnen zijn die dit land nodig heeft. En leiderschap vergt offers.
Meaning that we sacrifice our conscience so that we can go out there and do heinous acts without feeling bad about it at all, you know? And sometimes that is beneficial, like in an army, you have a psychopathic soldier who is not feeling that much fear and who doesn't feel bad about killing people. There are, I mean, real benefits to being a psychopath, to being a sociopath, to being a narcissist, to having low empathy. So that's why orders like this facilitate people's descent. They facilitate their loss of conscience, so they become capable of doing anything without feeling any gripes about it whatsoever.
Al 500 jaar lang. De Gouden Eeuw, onze huidige welvaart. Alles waarin dit kleine land groot kan zijn.
Right, the golden age, our current prosperity. Again, all this money came from the VOC. To begin with, they could conduct their business in a somewhat moral manner. Not really. I mean, they set up colonies, they intimidated local populations, They got local rulers to work with them, and sometimes even had to force them to sign signatures on trading deals. So they used also hard power. But to begin with, they sold a lot of spice, and that was easy to ship. It did not require so much manpower. But as consumer demands changed and they had to move into different product categories, they needed more manpower, and that's when they turned to slavery. The Dutch East India Company, the West East India Company enslaved more than 1 million people. And when anybody revolted against them, they killed them. So there was a Chinese population that revolted against them, and they damn near killed them all. They systematically murdered 10,000 Chinese people. The families that brought the Netherlands the golden age, all their prosperity, it comes from psychopathic elites that were willing to murder, coerce, and enslave. And the thing is that modern mega corporations today do the exact same thing. Right? This is not just something that is in the past. When we look at the mega corporations that are founded on the blueprint of the VOC, when we look at Apple, when we look at Microsoft, when we look at Tesla, the very bottom of their supply chain is the cobalt mines of the Congo, for instance, where we have people working for dismal pay, and we have children in mines that collapse every week. The mega corporations today are utilizing black slaves. So the very television screen I'm watching this on, the very device that you're watching me on, is built off the backs of African slaves in the Congo. And that is just one example. So nothing has changed. We like to think that there's no evil anymore, right? After the Second World War, people are good now, No, they are not. Humans have not changed at all. And the elites, so to say, and I get it, we shouldn't call them that. They're actually very, very lowly. But these degenerates, these hungry ghosts, they have not changed at all. I genuinely think that there aren't that many evil people in the world. I think there are few evil people in the world, but they attain and amass a great amount of power, and they bring a lot of people into their egregoric space. And this egregoric space, this metaphysical entity, ends up hijacking the minds of the people that work for them, so that they become subsumed into something very nefarious indeed. So the people that work for the VOC, they were part of something very, very evil, and thus became corrupted. And that is the case today with anyone who works for a corporation that is conducting itself in inhumane ways. And that includes most mega corporations. I would say all mega corporations are inherently evil because they're based on exploitation. Anyone who works for a company like that has to do what the Aries members do to a degree, and that is to flush down their sense of guilt and shame and sadness into the Sitra Akra. And the thing is that it's not only people that work for mega corporations, it's all of us, in big ways and small ways, right? When you take that big slice of cake, instead of letting someone else have it, right, but you see it's bigger, you can get some more cake, and you take it, you're gonna feel a little bit guilty about that. But what do most people do? They do like this, right? They push it down, So we all do this, right? It's easy to look at a show like this and be like, oh, it's only like these sort of elites that do this, right? In these very exclusive circles. I'm a good person, I don't do that. Come on, come on. You do, I do, we all do. We all sacrifice to Beal. We all do. Right, we need to face it. We need to face it like Jacob faced it. We need to face that we, more often than we probably think, more often than we would probably like to know, we sacrifice to Beal. We do something that's not very nice, and it can be a small thing, quote unquote a small thing, but these small things, they pile up. There's a lot of gallons of bile that we flush down into the Sitra Akra every year. And we need to be conscious of that. We're not here to be perfect, not yet at least. We need a lot of time, a lot of lifetimes. We're not here to be perfect in this life. but we are here to become more conscious, right? So for instance, next time you eat that steak, and I'm not saying don't eat steak, I'm just saying maybe think about that animal that was murdered systematically alongside millions of other animals in what is essentially the most horrific thing we've ever created, which is the mass murdering of animals for our own delight. Most people, they don't want to think about that because it's not comfortable, it's not nice. How about we act like Jacob, and when we feel that something is off, we confront it, you know? If more people did this, if everyone did this, we would live in paradise right now. We would. If we could all be more conscious about the shitty things we do, big and small, and that others do, and then act accordingly, then we will literally have heaven on earth.
Forte de odes filor mi, en bet de gold en in tuister zie.
So here we see that the witch is actually participating in this ritual. She's actually the one who's facilitating it. And how about, like Rosa, we don't sacrifice our connection to our soul, but hold on to it, hold on to the pain. Just hold on to it. So Rosa, what she's doing here is what the alchemists do, the true alchemist. And that is, they don't shy away from the darkness. They enter the darkness. They enter the chaos. They enter the Sitrakra, they enter the Prima Materia, because it's down there that the fallen spirit is. It's down there that we can repair the brokenness of the world and our own psyche. It's in the darkness that the true light shines. In the darkest place, that's where the gold is. There's a lot of pain there. There's a lot of power there. And if you just dare connect with that sympathetically, then healing will occur. But we have to go down there, we have to connect to it. And here we have a VOC ship, probably in East Asia. And this is where the Netherlands made the money that made the Golden Age possible. So it was on an island like this that they genocided 10,000 Chinese people.
Maurits? Maurits!
And Rosa now emerges very Christ-like actually, with all the sins of Ares upon herself, so that she becomes a mirror for all the atrocities that they have committed over the centuries. So all this stuff they've been pushing down, now it's rushing into conscious awareness. And that is much too much for these puny minds to handle. And so they off themselves, one after the other. So this right here, that is Ishtar having met her dark sister, returning to the surface to show us up. So this is Return of the Goddess type stuff right here. Because in Egyptian cosmology, Mat, justice, harmony, balance, the feather that your heart is weighed against in the afterlife, is a goddess. It's a goddess power. And now that wisdom is returning, and it's not just a little bit, it's like this, right? Because they've done everything they can to weigh more than the feather. And when you weigh way more than the feather, there's only one way you can go, really. And that is to crash. So we see here and I'm not going to show all this, but basically a lot of the senior members of Ares have offed themselves. Mostly men, also some women. There's blood everywhere, there's bodies everywhere. But now notice, and meanwhile we're also seeing images of the regent families. And notice here Henry Schwanenburg, who I've been pointing out, he did not kill himself because he has been connecting with Beal already. He's been in touch with his shame and guilt for what he's done. But the people who off themselves, they've not done that. They've just been living their lives on the surface, right? Separated from their conscience, separated from all their shame. And now it's coming back 1,000-fold. So this is alchemy right here. This is collective shadow work to a very, very extreme degree, where Rosa is being the alchemical goddess who is entering the Nigredo phase and having them face their shadow, because that's what you do in the Nigredo phase of alchemy. That is, you face your own shadow. But now these people who have been refusing to do that, now they have to face the collective shadow of Beal, of them and their families. And that's too much to do, right? And here we have Maurits, who, unlike his son, can't face himself, and so pulls off his face. And here we have the White Witch, who represents the feminine that is disconnected from the depths, with Rosa being Venus, being Ishtar, who has descended into the underworld and reclaimed her dark sister. And Egregore is the goddess of the dead, and she's now claimed her servants here, right, who have entered her realm now. So this is very much return of the goddess type of an ending here. So that was it for our Ares commentary series. Thank you so very much for tagging along this very interesting TV show. I knew that a lot of you wouldn't have heard about it before, but also intuited that a lot of you would like it. I think it's a really, really good show. I think it's a show that confronts reality instead of seeking to escape from it, as so much art nowadays do. I think this show is just super relevant. I mean, it's a timeless piece of art that really delves into the psyche, not just of the elite, but of everyone, the collective psyche of society and our own individual psyche as well. Because we all sacrifice to Beal to one extent or another, even if it is just picking up that bigger slice of cake that could have gone to someone else. But of course, it is also a scathing critique of corporate egregoric society that we live in. And even though I think only a few people in the world are truly evil, that doesn't prevent a few evil people who are lording over these corporate egregores from hijacking a lot of minds, or at least getting a lot of humans to enter a metaphysical thought space that is rendering them less empathetic, less conscious, but also our own individual consciousness and how we, let's just be honest, sometimes ignore our guilt and our shame so that we don't have to feel too uncomfortable with grabbing that bigger slice of cake. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that this is going to be food for thought, both when it comes to how society is running, right, the power structures in place, but also how our own minds work. Because I would love for more people to be like Jacob, to first and foremost feel that there is something off, but then also to confront it head on. And then I would love for more of us to be brave like Rosa and dare descend into the darkness, into the shadows, into the Sitrakra, because as Isaac Luria, the great mystic, said, that's what we need to do to heal the world. We need to connect with the fallen. We need to connect with the fallen aspects of ourselves so that we can conduct this healing, this alchemy, this transmutation of turning lead into gold, to taking the fallen aspects of our own psyche and purifying it, elevating it, and reintegrating it into a psyche. And if we can attain that transformation within ourselves, we will help facilitate that in society. And you know how the Hermetic saying goes, as above, so below. And we can take that a step further, as within, so without. Thank you for watching, and until next time.